What's up, witches? Welcome to another episode of the BetterWitch podcast, where we have candid conversations with real life practitioners and professionals because when we know better, we witch better. We are broadcasting live from Witchwork, New York City's only co-working space for witches. I'm your host, Ali Kravitz, aka Bronx Witch. I'm the founder of Witchwork and CEO of BetterWitch Coaching, and you can tune in to live tapings of the show from my YouTube channel, BetterWitch Coaching and Podcast. Today's guest co-host is Samantha, aka Sam Garcia. Sam is the author of the best-selling book, Regenerative Business: How to Align Your Business with Nature for More Abundance, Fulfillment, and Impact, and is the founder of Dirty Alchemy, the online school for conscious entrepreneurs, coaches, and course creators. You can learn more about Sam at thedirtyalchemy.com. Welcome, Sam. It's so great to see you.
Good to see you too. Oh my gosh. So
Hello.
I would never live in a city because it has like the wrong tree to human ratio, in my opinion. But like a co-working space for witches, are you kidding? That's so cool.
Yes, it's so necessary. I was calling us, we had a different name for a while. We were Bronx Witch headquarters, and I was calling us We Work for Witches. And then I just said, wait, why don't I just call us Witchwork? Because
So
then we
good.
don't have to explain that. And people will just get it. But yeah, one of the feedback like points that we would get from a lot of folks, I'm a Reiki healer and a tarot reader, and working out of your home can be difficult. Going into other people's homes can be awkward and hard to navigate. But co-working spaces are not typically equipped for spiritual or energetic healing. They're usually too corporate, too cold, and they don't often have a lot of like the amenities and equipment, yoga mats or massage tables or things that you need to actually facilitate your services. And therefore you're stuck like dragging things with you all the time. And it just can be like really
And you are probably clearing the
difficult.
space. You're probably clearing the entire space. So like the practitioners probably would have to like clear their own space when they're going in, but they can just drop that. That's awesome.
That's right. When people come in, they often don't want to leave. They're always like, oh my God, the vibes in here are so great. But it's because we're literally burning like sacred herbs and there's all types of services happening here. And like, it's not out of the ordinary for people to show up. And bring me gifts like for my altars, for my
Oh my God.
spirits. Like it's that type of a place. And so, that sort of stuff is already done for you. You can really just start like show up
Mhm.
and do the work that you have to do and take care of your people. And when I opened in 2021, I was realizing that like spirit literally woke me up in the middle of the night and was like, you can't see everybody. Like you can't take every tarot reading. You can't do every Reiki session. If you create a space where others can gather and do the work that they do, then literally thousands of people can be
Mm.
helped in your space. And you could never do that yourself, even if you were like up 24 hours, seeing someone every single week. So that was the inspiration. So yeah, that's our baby.
So good. Love it.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you so much. And as Witchwork grows, I really want you to know that like, and I do not mean this in any sort of like a like suck up to my co-host. I have to say, like Jimmy
I got
Fallon, you are so amazing, kind of a way. Like with anything that we accomplish moving forward, please know that your book, Regenerative Business, is directly impacting that. Like I do not kid around when I say that your book is the best business book that I have read to date. It's had the most real impact on me as a witchpreneur. I think that's probably because it's the only book I've ever read that is written by a witchpreneur for witchpreneurs, right? Like there's tons of business books that I've read, and there's tons of spiritual and witchy books that I've read. But this is the only one that has brought those two together in a very, very real way. And actually, I don't have my copy with me, which I was like kicking myself for when I sat down. But the reason I don't have my copy is because it is sitting next to my bed. Yay. Okay. I'm glad that you have your copy. Show everyone the beautiful cover. but I don't have it with me because I literally forgot to grab it from my bedside table because I've read through it completely. It's filled with highlights and notes and tabs and all of those things. But now I'm going back and doing some of the exercises that I skipped over because I wanted to get, through the book itself.
Mhm.
Um, it's really become like a manual for me. So it's unavailable because it's working. It's something that, unlike other books, you read it, you done, you put it in your bookshelf, you never think about it again. I was like, oh no, this has to just sit right here because
Oh.
this right here is the manual. So I genuinely, really, truly, from the bottom of my heart, thank you for taking the time to write this book because it is going to make a huge difference for a lot of people like me, who are spiritual and are authentic in their spiritual practices, but also see a future in business for themselves and are trying to bring those two things together in a way that doesn't clash, doesn't like
Yeah.
ruin their lives, doesn't turn them off, doesn't turn other people off. And you really, really nailed it. So I thank you so much.
Oh, thanks for saying that because it's been almost 2 years since I published the book. So it's been a while since I've been like in that process of it. And I've been going through, I mean, this eclipse portal that we just went through was like a lot. And I like am definitely like processing some existential stuff. And
Hmm.
I hearing that is just because I'm working on my next book and I haven't been making enough time for it, and it's really easy to get pulled into like the spiral of social media, and like you
Yeah.
feel like you're writing for that, and you are, and you're making and you're growing and stuff, but it's a good reminder of the bigger impact for me and for my purpose is the actual writing of the book. So
Hmm.
gotta make some time.
Yeah, 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 yeah. And I was thinking, I was like, you know what? It's a good thing that I didn't bring my copy because I would be sitting here being like, okay, on page 4, let's talk about this, and we would be here all day. And I know that we all have busy lives and can't do that. So what I want to do though is I do want to sort of start at the top for folks that are completely unfamiliar with this principle because I was unfamiliar with it. I'm not in agriculture. I like to think of
Mhm.
myself as someone who cares about nature and volunteer at my community gardens and grow my plants. And but I'm not necessarily familiar with the technicals of agriculture and with farming. And so I was hoping we could start with, for those who also are unfamiliar, with the idea of like what is regenerative agriculture exactly, and how is that different from the other farming or agricultural models that we might be more familiar with, like sustainable
Mhm.
farming and things like that.
For context, we're doing this because with regenerative business, it's looking from the idea that with essentially that nature is a systems designer and is like the best systems designer that as there is, and the most of us have an easier time grasping things in the 3D world and then to bring it into the etheric. I mean, maybe not. We're a bunch of witches here, so like we get the etheric, but
Yeah, we're a little
um
different.
we're a little different. But the book keeps circling back into regenerative agriculture as this great demonstration of what's possible with our businesses, with the idea that with regenerative agriculture, we're using nature as the designer of the system versus a factory farm where taking food growing and we're making it like a factory where efficiency is above all, money and profit is above all. And I mean, if you're a business owner, I know I don't think everyone here is a business owner, but if you are, you know that money is a very important piece of business. Otherwise, you just have a very expensive hobby. But it's
Hmm.
not the thing that we push and only have on the altar, only have on the
Hmm.
pedestal. We're also bringing in other humans, the impact that we make, the other species on this planet, the actual planet, our future generations, and bringing and weaving all of those in. So with conventional farming, which is the if you go to a grocery store, that's mainly what you're eating from, is this
Right.
model that's based off of a factory. And so since the industrial revolution, since the creation and the spread of the assembly line, it's really this idea of I'm trying to make this end product as cheaply and as quickly as possible. So how can we automate more? How can we cut costs as much as possible so that we can have the highest profit margins as possible? And then over time, usually quality tends to go down because the quality is stuck with more artisan luxury brands. Not to say that the luxury brands in our collective are any better. So with conventional farming, that's where you see workers who are essentially indentured servants, where they're put into incredibly unsafe environments using chemicals that are known to cause cancer, known to cause all sorts of illnesses. We don't care about the nutrient density of the food. We don't care about the quality of the food. We're just trying to make things that look exactly the same over and over and over again. And we don't care about how we treat the animals. We don't care about if the earth is going to be completely unusable after the fact. We don't care if the chemicals run off into rivers. We're just trying to make the food as similar and as cheap as possible at the end. And then, okay, so step up. If we're here, we all know organic, right? Like the step up from there is great. It's organic. We're at least using chemicals that are organic chemicals. We're using fertilizers that are organic fertilizers. And this is because my background is in environmental science. I minored in that, majored in physics, minored in environmental science. And this was back in 2010 when I was in college, and all the conversation was around the sustainability movement, and like sustainable was the buzzword back then. I don't think it's a buzzword anymore, but the idea was, how do we make things as sustainable as possible? But the problem then, and the big aha moment I had back then, was the idea that sustaining isn't enough. Even back then, that was 15 years ago now. If we sustain what we're currently doing in the world, we're headed towards destruction very, very, very quickly. So, okay, if we can't sustain, if organic isn't enough, organic, like it doesn't take into account there is like some talk about nutrient density, but we're not actually thinking about the imports. Like we could be importing fertilizer, like organic fertilizer from a Tyson chicken factory. That's what some of them do. Like we're not actually considering the full system that's involved. We're not considering all of the inputs and the outputs. That would be like sustainable. So it's like, it's fine, we're sustaining, but like what we're currently sustaining is a disaster. The step beyond it is regenerative. And so we are thinking about all of the inputs and outputs, and we're trying to leave the land, if we're thinking in terms of agriculture, better than it was before. So, and this is where, if you have any sort of environmental bent, there can be a little bit of humans are the problem, and humans are the problem, but like humans don't have to be the problem. It's like, let's keep humans out of nature. Let's keep them away from our nature preserves. Because the humans are the problem. We need to save it from the bad humans. But one story that I really like with this is Darwin, like that guy. After he was essentially put on house arrest after sharing about evolution for the last few years of his life, or is it decades? It might have been decades of his life. But he spent his time researching earthworms. That's like what he put his scientific brain on. And what he observed is that naturally, earthworms will produce about an inch of topsoil every 100 years. So topsoil is the soil that we need to grow food and to sustain human life and other species' lives on this planet. And what I observed, so I fast forward many years, met my husband, who's a full-time regenerative farmer, grew up off-grid, stopped going to school as a preteen because he just wanted to surf all the time, lives in Hawaii. And he has been a full-time farmer for 40 years. And what I saw him doing was he's able to actually make an inch or more of topsoil every year, 100 times faster. So we have the potential as humans, and with our human intervention, with human relationship with nature, with humans' stewardship and caring about nature and being in relationship with nature, we can actually help. And so this is where, like, yes, humans are the problem and also can be the solution. Us playing a part, us trying to make a change can act, and if we're thinking about all of nature and not just human growth and economic growth, like that's where the solution lies. So with regenerative farming, we are thinking about how do we make the most nutrient dense food? How do we make the healthiest food for our communities? How do we create food sovereignty? How do we make it so that if we take on a plot of land, it is more fertile when we leave it instead of depleted, because we want to take all the fertility out of it and use it for our economic gain. Of course, we're thinking about how do we have thriving financials for the farm? How do we think about not just our families and ourselves, but our communities? So I'll stop there. That was a long ramble.
No, that is so great. That's a great explanation. And I think really what it boils down to is understanding that like we've passed the point of no return or of return, but basically like if we just continue on in the way that we have been, that destruction is inevitable, because we've reached the point where we've done so much damage that we can't just coast along with like, slightly better practices and think that that's going to get us very far. We have to be honest about the damage that has been done, which, opens up a whole can of worms in terms of like people who deny climate change and that even that there is a problem, right? But we first have to acknowledge that so much damage has been done. And then we have to start thinking about how to actually reverse that damage and put back into the environment what it is that we have taken out. And I think one of the reasons why this principle resonated with me so deeply is I felt a lot of correlation between that and what has been done to society and to people. And as a member of several marginalized communities, the damage very much has been done. And I think we can easily, make the connection between what has happened with our environment, with what has happened with communities of color, with women, with queer folks, and people in food deserts and urban environments, and seeing the ways in which those harmful practices that have been permeated for the last hundreds of years in this country have created situations where we can't just now like play nice and expect things to even out and be well for everyone. That we have to acknowledge that significant harm has been done to different communities, and we have to look at how to actually put back into those communities what has been taken out. It's not enough to just now be like, well, we won't take as much anymore, and think that that's going to right those wrongs. And I think the point that the humans in the equation are the ones to fix it. And so when we look at marginalized communities that have been harmed, we have to stop looking at those communities for the solutions and look to the oppressors, to the colonizers, to those who have benefited from the harm done to those communities, and say, you have to actively put back what you have taken out, and you have to change your practices so now that you are focusing on how to do that. And the good news, I think, from all of that, for people who maybe cringe at that idea because perhaps they're a part of the communities that have benefited from these harmful practices. Perhaps they are a part of the communities that would be looked to put back what has been taken. The good news is regenerative agriculture proves that that actually benefits everybody when we do it that way. That it might initially look like, oh, you've got to give up something, or you've got to spend more, or you've got to try harder, you've got to get less yield in your crops, and you've got to sacrifice the homogeneity of all of your crops, and you can't, et cetera, et cetera. But actually, yes, while there may be those upfront costs, in the end, you also end up with a situation that allows you to do more and to last for longer and to have bigger gains in the long run. So for people who kind of bristle at the idea of putting back into the communities that have been harmed, it really actually plays out in everyone's favor. And we see that when we put these regenerative practices into effect. Everybody wins, including the farmers, including the producers of the crop. you're not just sort of like doing charity for the world
Mhm.
by doing that. So yeah, that really I think stuck out to me as like a really incredible like way to illustrate to people the importance of having a regenerative approach in all areas.
Yeah. Well, so scooting back to my eclipse existential issues is I've been looking closer and closer at the potential of global systems collapse and
Mhm.
what it looks like in terms of like the science behind how much oil we have left and like what does that actually look like to maintain our current structures, because things haven't gotten even we haven't sustained since 2010. It's ramped up. Like 2010 was before Amazon was like a big thing.
Right.
So it's really hugely grown. And so I've been looking a lot with, okay, and sitting with the, what does this actually look like? I'm in Hawaii. I'm in an island. I like, what if we actually get cut off from places? I swear this is this is gonna circle back around. Like, what happens if we like, because it's like 90% imports here. Even though we have like
Yeah.
we can have our own water, we can have our own grow our own food. Most people just in most restaurants just buy from Costco here,
Right.
which is
Right.
imported food. Um, but what does that look like if we don't have internet? What does that look like if we don't have cars? And this is a very car-based place. It's not a city like where you can walk around New York. It's not here. Like I'm on 7 acres, and to get to town, it's a 25-minute drive. What does that look
Wow.
like in like 90-degree weather? And
Yeah.
so I've sitting a lot with this, and like I do like lean doomsday a little bit, and I have for a long
Yeah.
time. So like, let me just share that bit. But
Mhm.
I've been thinking about like what do we actually need as a family, and what do we actually need as humans, and where does this joy and happiness come from? And
Mhm.
I built a very successful business. I'm planning to continue running a successful business. And also, what does it look like if I am trying to decentralize abundance from money?
Mm.
What does it look like if I can't use money? What is that? What are those things look like? And that leaps me forward to what you were talking about is if we look at the spread of wealth globally and in our country, it's like people have billions of dollars. And like you look at if you read the things, if we took $1 billion from there's 2000 over 2700 billionaires in the world, and if we took $1 billion, like 2700 billion dollars from each of them, like they would
Mhm.
each all be billionaires
Right.
overall. So in terms of giving back to communities, it's the answer is clear to me. But like, how do
Yeah.
we actually do those things? And it comes, of course we individually need to be acting, but in terms of things that make the most impact, it is spreading wealth from those who are hoarding it. Because we can
Mhm.
have abundance and we can have overflow, but these are the people who are hoarding.
Right. Right. Absolutely. And I think the conversation about money itself is so important because when it comes to the witchpreneurs of the world, maybe not the witchpreneurs because the preneur part is like they've already maybe tackled this
Yeah.
thing, but for other people, something that comes up quite a bit is, the idea of cringing at the idea of associating money with the work that you do as a healer, as a reader,
Mhm.
in the first place. And there's a lot of unpacking of that needs to be done because I tell you, the billionaires have done that work. They have made their peace with the idea that they should be paid and paid well for every little thing that they do, for, breathing, for getting out of bed.
Mhm.
And it's the rest of us that are struggling to not only care for others, but even just for ourselves that are dealing with these. I consider it a misconception that somehow there is something dirty or inauthentic about being paid for the work that you do, maybe even being paid well or making lots of money off of your talents, your skills, your contributions to the world. And I think we agree on this because I felt like this was being echoed throughout your book. I feel like the problem is not money. those are pieces of paper and coins that we have decided to attribute a value to, and that we have decided is a fair exchange for food and clothes and shelter. The problem is that the bad guys have the most of it.
Yeah.
And that is the issue that needs to be resolved. It's not like money needs to go away or we shouldn't be getting it in exchange for the work that we do, but that it needs to be equally distributed. And that those of us who bring value into the world have to accept that we deserve it, and that it is a part of the system, but it's not the problem in the system. The problem in the system is the way in which the system allows for some folks to hoard money, and rewards people basically for harming the world and harming others with more money. There needs to be stricter restrictions, stricter regulations, and it should be harder to make a lot of money off of harming people, because you have people who are doing really great work, that are really caring for folks. And the idea is that they should be like martyring themselves and doing it for charity, which then immediately puts them in a position where they can no longer afford to do it. Like nonprofits start and go out of business every single day. Charitable endeavors, purpose-driven businesses, they start with these great intentions, and before you know it, they're gone. And then everyone's really sad. Oh my gosh, our local coffee shop. Oh, that little bookstore that was giving to the trans community. Oh, that co-op, that community fridge, it's out of commission now. What happened? Well, the answer is easy. They ran out of money.
Yeah.
They ran out of money because we, for some reason, want to look at work that actually benefits the world as some type of a charitable endeavor that should just be done for like hearts and stars and thoughts and prayers. And I completely understand the compulsion to want to dismantle the entire system, and flip the table entirely. But like, you can't flip the table if you can't even get into the room to sit at it.
Yeah.
So we've got to get good people seated around the table first, because the conversation of whether or not that table should even be there, if it should be something else completely, is never going to be had by the bad guys at the table. It does not benefit them to even consider that. So I really fight back against this idea that purpose-driven work should not be associated with financial gain and financial abundance, because that is what it takes in order to really have an impact on a large scale. We see that with the bad guys. They're able to impact our everyday lives, whether you like Amazon, whether you like Tesla, these things are impacting your everyday life. There's almost no getting away from it. And we want people who are actually going to be healing the world to have that level of impact. But we don't seem to understand that the difference between those guys and these guys is that one group has a ton of money at their disposal and the other is just struggling to like get by.
Yeah. And that's by design.
Yes.
We can't come together. We can't rise up when we are too distracted, too tired, and are just trying to work 3 jobs to cover rent, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
That's
Very
by
much
design.
so.
Yeah.
Very much so.
Unless you are planning on like joining a monastery or going off grid with everything you have right now, not in the cute way that like with the solar systems and everything, and like just go out into the forest with what you currently have, you might as well just get good at money.
Yeah.
Like otherwise you're feeding into what they want.
Right. And not to mention, if your ultimate goal is to go off the grid, if your ultimate goal is to be separate from the system, money will help you do that.
I can be your example.
You are an example of that. You're actually able to do that if you have the money to do so.
We bought 7 acres in 2022 thanks to my online business. We are able to, we have multiple Native Hawaiian families living on the property. We don't charge them any rent. We built structures for them. And we have a massive solar system. We have a washer and dryer. We have it look like I'm in a normal office. Like we have an actual house that we're living in and we're completely off grid.
Right.
because of my online business, because I'm, and I don't know, I'm from Michigan. I'm pretty frugal by heart. But I knew I wanted to have like a comfortable home to live in and also be off grid and off the system. When the Lahaina fires happened, we were the only people with power and cell service because we were off grid. Like cells were down for weeks. There was no power anywhere. Like we were this communication hub because we were already off grid and ready for a disaster.
Right. Right. And I think about there's someone I follow, hopefully his name will come to me, but he made a good point. And I mean, this is a point that anybody close to the land makes all the time. He grows all types of things like in his backyard. He's got like a half an acre of land with a small house
You
in a
can grow
fairly
so much.
urban area.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And he's growing all sorts of things for himself. And there was a time, I mean, I guess this happens all the time, but there was a time where like food shortages were big in the news and it was going to be possible that we weren't going to get food. And he was like holding an apple and he was like, what are you talking about, food shortage? I can grow hundreds of apple trees from this one apple. I don't understand what you mean by food shortage. But the point that he was making was our own individual abundance frees us from the control of these systems that might want to manipulate us or kind of puppeteer our lives with what they can manage. Right here in New York City, a family in Long Island made the news because while egg prices are soaring and that's severely impacting like people's ability to feed their families, these folks got chickens a few years ago and they live in New York City and they've got chickens in the backyard and they were like, egg prices where? It doesn't affect us because we're able to provide for ourselves. So it's really, really important that people who care about the world, about others, and about the impact that they are having realize that money is a tool that allows you to actually be able to build a life where you are free from the control that these systems have on you. And then when you're free from these systems, you're able to start offering yourself to others. That family started giving away their eggs because they
Yeah.
had plenty. And you only become able to actually make a positive impact in the world because you have the financial resources to set up systems that provide for yourself and provide for others. And I think, if there's anything that I would want to help spiritual practitioners to see, it's that. And I think your book does it in such a beautiful way because you really illustrate like, okay, and then what do you do with that? This is not just getting money for the sake of getting money. This is getting money for the sake of creating something better, creating a better system that other people can replicate and model. And we can take our power back from what in reality is a very small group of people that have a huge amount of control for one reason and one reason only, and that's their incredible access to wealth.
Yeah. So good. It really is something where let's say you're in the camp where you're still like you see all capitalism as a bad thing. And like, let me just drop in here that I think there's a difference between capitalism and toxic corporate capitalism.
Yeah.
But let's say you're in that camp and you really want to be moving away from money. You feel really awkward having people pay you for your services. Like, let's realize, okay, maybe there is a North Star for you where you want to actually create the world beyond that. But right now we are in this system. And again, unless you're planning on going to a monastery or go off grid with what you have on your back right now, you have to work within this system. And of course, the goal this entire time can be like, I want to be a pillar in my community so that if shit hits the fan, like people know that they can come to me. I have all of the resources at a place. I have alternative health. I have health services. I have a way to provide food and water. I have a way to like deal with waste. I have like all of these things already in place so that we can actually live outside of a society. But for you to comfortably do it, you're going to have to work within the system and work with what people have. And you know what when it comes to spirituality, if we look back, however many years ago, you used to, if you wanted to learn spiritual teachings, you used to have to give up your life, give up your
Yeah.
family, give up everything you owned, and be
Travel to the
essentially like,
Amazon.
yeah, and like lifetime, like full-time servitude to this person.
Mhm.
Which is, I mean, beautiful. I think a lot of people are called to that idea, but like, how lucky are we that we can just exchange money instead of giving
Right.
up our entire lives
Right.
to be in connection with spirit and learn certain things and work with certain people.
Yeah. I think people sometimes don't think about that like in all of history, the pillars of communities, the leaders, the astrologers, the spiritual guides were paid. They just
Yeah.
weren't necessarily paid with dollar bills and coins because that wasn't considered valuable yet. We didn't have that. But they were absolutely paid with other forms of value. And it usually was servitude. It was in order to sit at your feet and learn from you, I am going to prepare your meals and clean
Mhm.
your laundry and cook for you and, prepare you a home and all of those things. So the idea that the people who were benefiting society were just getting nothing and were just, struggling and dragging themselves around in rags was really never the case.
Yeah.
And when I think about like where in history that change happened, it's not because you mentioned it, like that's by design, that so many of us think that there's something wrong with making money for the work that we do. I think about like the introduction of the church, and I think about how central to the church's story is the idea that money is evil, it's corrupt, and it's dangerous. Meanwhile, the church sits on top of like one of the greatest collections of wealth in the world.
Mhm.
And they're actively trying to convince everybody else that there's something wrong with having it. Yet they clearly know that that's not true. Otherwise, they would give away all the money that they have, and every single church would be like a lean to shack. But
Yeah.
instead, the Vatican is covered in marble and gold. And they know good and well that money is not the problem. But by convincing everybody else that it is, it keeps the money in the hands of those that only want to see a small group of people benefit from it,
Mhm.
which is the thing that's different.
Mhm.
And it's not the money that has changed things. It's who the money serves, who the value serves, and what those people want from the world. That has changed. So that's such an important conversation to have. And of course, we can talk about that all day. But now seems like a really good time for us to take a quick commercial break. So now is the time, which is to refill your teas, run to the Little Witchy's room because we've got Sam Garcia with us, the author of Regenerative Business, and we've got some really great things to talk about coming up next. What's up, witches? While you are refilling your teas, I want to talk to my boss witches out there specifically. Because if you have a witchy business, a product, or a service that you want to get in front of thousands of witches that tune into this show, an ad spot is the best way to do it. Ad spots for season 4 are now open. The Better Witch podcast has been downloaded over 16,000 times. Thank you guys so much for that love. And just imagine, for those of you who are boss witches, what would you do with 16,000 new followers, customers, or clients? How would that put you in the position to keep doing the work that you have been called to do? Now's the time to get in. You can check out the details on how to become a sponsor of this show and get your business in front of all of our incredible witchy viewers and listeners down in the description of this video. And now let's get back to the show. So, the intersection between capitalism and purpose-driven work, I think, is an important one. And like I said, we could talk about it literally forever, because if there's one thing that I think would flip the script, it's that. Because I
Yeah.
really do think that spiritual entrepreneurs, in many ways, hold themselves back, and
Yeah.
it all comes down to this one concept. Um, And that's a big part of my passion in my coaching platform, BetterWitch Coaching, and why I focus on spiritual entrepreneurs, because I feel like we need the most help with that. When it comes to other forms of work, people don't even bat an eyelash at the idea of being compensated for it. If I'm
Yeah.
helping you with your digital marketing, or if I've made a really great kitchen sponge, the idea that people would pay for these services or products, it's like, oh, no problem. But the minute we start talking about work that is like designed to help people in an energetic way, in a spiritual way, in a holistic way, maybe if it's herbalism, etc. Now, all of a sudden, it's like, you want to be paid for that? What? My goodness, what a crazy and terrible idea. And one of the things that I think is a result of that mentality is the impact on our physical bodies and our nervous systems. And I will tell you, for fear of having it make me look like a complete weakling crybaby, but everybody who knows me already knows I'm an absolute crybaby. I'm a Leo, so we pretend like we're big and bad, but the truth is that we're just like big babies. Your chapter on the nervous system made me cry. I'm reading it in bed, and I'm reading through the symptoms that you are listing of all the ways in which being on the wrong side of this and not running your business in a regenerative way can show up in your physical body. And I'm like, oh, I have that. Oh, I have that. Oh, I have that. And there were things on that list that I've been dealing with since I started my business that I had not put the connections with. And I'm thinking to myself, are my hormones out of whack? Are my pillowcases the wrong material? Like, what is going on? And I just sort of like, it wasn't like I was like crying through the chapter. I was just sort of like reading, and I'm taking notes, and I'm like, oh shit, holy fuck, wow. Okay. And then I like closed it. I'm like, okay, bedtime. And then I laid there, and I literally just went like, and all of these tears just started pouring out, because I was like, oh, I get it. Like, I have been in survival mode for all of my life. And then I went into business, and the only model that I had for how to do it was this really toxic, dangerous, capitalist way of doing it. And I was causing all of this harm to my psyche, to my body, and not realizing how those things were connected. And when you connected those dots, it was so incredible, because I was like, oh, I think I know how to fix this. Like, I think I know how to fix this. And immediately I was like, drop the caffeine, get rid of the coffee, ashwagandha in the tea at night. We've got to do something about our sleep cycles. We've got to stop, pushing ourselves in this way. And things started to clear up for me so wonderfully. And it's only been like a month or so that I've been, like really, I mean, like my skin was breaking out, and I didn't know why. I'm 38 years old. I'm like, what is this? Acne? Like, am I a teenager again? What the hell is going on? And I'm looking at all these things, and I'm like, maybe it's premenopause, maybe it's hormone things, maybe it's and then it was like, no, bitch, you're not sleeping, you're stressed the fuck out. You wake up every single moment thinking the world is gonna collapse, thinking that the only way to succeed is to just keep pushing yourself harder, to never give yourself rest, to never give yourself grace, to show up in the world like a bro, and there's another way. There's another way to be doing this. And it was just one of the biggest aha, like light bulb moments for me. And I realized that after 3 years of really harming myself as I'm doing this thing, that I can actually embrace joy and peace and rest and fun, and that the world is not going to collapse and end, and that in reality, things in my business might actually do well. And that's exactly what's been happening. Like, this last month has been one of the best months I've ever had. And I think it's because I'm having fun, and people know it, and they're like, what's happening over here? I want to be a part of it.
What's more magnetic than a Leo having fun?
Right? I mean, come on. And like everybody wants to be around you. And so I've got all of these people that are like, what's happening? I want to hear your story. I want to learn more. And like realizing that for all of my life, I have been held, that none of my worst case scenarios have ever actually come to be.
Yeah.
And that I have done enough, that I have planted enough seeds, that I have been good to people, that I have been putting out all this wonderful energy into the world by having a business centered around purpose and compassion and helping others and elevating and putting other people on a platform. And that there's a certain level of like comfort that I can have that maybe somebody who has been taking as their way of building their business doesn't have.
Yeah.
Because if suddenly you're not able to take, or if suddenly people wise up to how they're being taken advantage of, that could all fall apart. But that there is none of that for me. There
Yeah.
is no like, oh my goodness, we're going to wake up one day and be tired of the Bronxwood stealing from us. There is no like, some restriction could come down and not allow you to take advantage of people, because this business has been built on helping others.
Yeah.
And there's like a reward that comes from that if I allow myself to actually receive that reward and
Yeah.
stop thinking that the reward can only come as a result of like pushing myself to the point of no return.
Yeah. Oh, so good. What do you think the biggest obviously the biggest switch was in like perspective shift and mindset, but what do you feel like the big actions you shifted really made this month the best month?
Yeah, well, so first of all, not drinking coffee
Mm,
um was a huge one that I never really would have thought of that much. Like
yeah.
I'm like, oh, I read this thing that said if you give up coffee in a year, you'll lose 10 pounds because you're just not drinking as much creamer and sugar and stuff like that. And I know that caffeine is not necessarily like super great for you, but then there are studies that say that maybe a little caffeine is good for you and blah, 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 blah. But when I thought about like where coffee came into my life, it came into my life when COVID started.
Oh,
Um, yes, it came into my life when COVID started in a very interesting way. All of a sudden, both I and my husband, ex-husband, were home every day. And
mhm.
he was a daily coffee drinker.
Yeah.
Being in a corporate office, it's break room packed to the gills with all the Keurigs and all the
Mhm.
stuff. And so he's like downing, ounces upon ounces of coffee or iced coffee every single day.
Mhm.
And I was someone that only had a cup of coffee on the weekends when we were home together. That was like,
Mhm.
we would make a pot of coffee and both have it. And then all of a sudden we were home together every single day. And
Mhm.
so I picked up that habit and started having coffee along with him every single day because he was making it and it was there. And very interestingly, it's no longer my husband. Because it was not good for me. It was not a healthy relationship for me. And kind of in a symbolic way, neither was the coffee. But I got rid of the husband, didn't get rid of the coffee, kept drinking coffee every day, and only got worse and worse, and got up to a point where it was like 3 cups every day.
Yeah.
Um, and you get up and it's the first thing that you do, and I'm not eating until 5 in the evening because I'm drinking coffee like food. And eliminating that for 30 days was unbelievable. I didn't realize how like hyped up and
Yeah.
anxious and frantic of an energy it was, and how much it was impacting my ability to sleep, which is already hard for me because I'm a night person.
Yeah.
I'm a night owl, as my mom calls me. Very easy for me to stay up till 3 in the morning. I don't really feel like my brain starts until like 5 in the evening.
Yeah.
And that's natural for me. But when you live in a world that kind of expects you to be up at 8 in the morning because everything else is getting started, going to bed at 3, not necessarily super helpful, especially for strong stretches of time. And so giving up coffee, super, super helpful. I've felt my nervous system like starting to come back into check.
Mm.
I've been able to actually see the difference because I have had like 1 or 2 cups here and there with my ancestors. It's kind of like
Mhm.
a ritual thing. And I can't have more than like a little bit because I
Yeah.
feel how it makes me like nervous. And I just was living in that state of nervousness for
Yeah.
like 3 straight years.
Wow.
And not realizing what that was doing to me
Yeah.
and how it was impacting me. So that was a really big one. The point about meditating and chanting and its impact on the vagus nerve was another huge aha
Mhm.
because interestingly, the most effective form of meditation for me is what's called mantra meditation or japa
Mhm.
meditation in like
Mhm.
Hindu practices. And that is meditation that involves chanting, humming, often reciting things like Om. And I had very much fallen off from that because
Wow.
it was just like, I don't have the time.
Yeah.
I wake up and my alarm goes off and I snooze because I'm so exhausted. And then I get up and I just make it here in time to open and get to my meetings. And then I'm up all night. And it's just
Yeah.
this horrible cycle. And where I once had time or was making the time for
Yeah.
meditation, that had fallen off significantly in the last year and I wasn't doing that at all. And that was a big thing that I was like, oh, now I understand why every reading I've been doing, everything I've been doing has been like, get back to meditation. In my head, I was just like, I know, yes, get back to meditation. Okay. And I'm looking at it from like a, fluffy, like it's
Yeah.
good for you kind of a place. And I really appreciated you pointing out the science
Yeah.
of how not just meditation, but that particular form of meditation will actually help my nervous system to come back into like a good even place where I'm not making decisions from a space of like frantic desperation, but I'm actually able to like be present and feel my body and make choices that feel right for me, which then extend to the people that I'm serving.
Yeah.
So yeah, those two in particular really help. And then surprise, surprise, out of nowhere, my skin's clearing back up. And I'm
I
like,
love
oh,
that.
what do you know?
So good.
Yeah. Yeah. Hugely, hugely effective. And to tie that into what you were saying about like capitalism and there being a difference between like the economic system itself and like the very toxic version of it that we currently have
Yeah.
is that for me, what I've learned in that journey for myself is that, um, and I'm not an economist, so I don't know that I have the answer. I know I don't have the answer for this, right? Like I don't know how to solve capitalism, nor do I know like what alternative systems we could put into place. I don't know that socialism is the answer. I see problems with that as well. So I just don't know what the answer will be. But what I do feel like I know is that more than the system itself, it's the byproducts of the system that are the problem. The stress, the
Mhm.
fear, the tendency to put everything above our own well being and
Yeah.
have this idea of success at all costs, maximum profit versus just profit.
Yeah.
Um, pushing everything to the absolute limit with a blind disregard for how it's impacting us and impacting others, and making the connection between capitalism and our nervous systems really has allowed me to see how I can be an authentic, genuine, loving spiritual provider and practitioner in a capitalist economy and not have those two things butt up against each other. Because,
Yeah.
yes, not capitalism, but the effects of it absolutely butt up against everything I stand for as a spiritual practitioner, pushing myself to the point of harming myself, maximizing profit at the disregard of others, being in a state of fear and stress and then passing that on to other people. Those are the things that absolutely fly in the face of everything that I stand for as a spiritual practitioner. And
Mm.
those are the things that I can change
Yeah.
in myself and in my business. And it's already making such a huge, huge difference.
Well, and like the sovereignty that we can be created with our spiritual practices, with getting off things that pull us out of our center, like
Mm-hmm.
caffeine, alcohol, drugs, not sleeping,
Mm-hmm.
like all the being around too many people, like being on social media all the time. All these things take us away from our center and
Yeah.
feed into like the capitalist machine, right?
Yeah.
Like, of course, okay, having a profitable business where you're deeply serving the people in your community, deeply serving the people who you're meant to serve in this lifetime, amazing. We can do that within a better form than our current government has it set up, but but
Big
like
facts.
this year it's probably not going to be solved. What can be solved this year is us being really centered in our sovereignty and being very intentional where we spend our money,
Mm-hmm.
and really intentionally how we serve our people. Like what networks, what like mycelium networks can be planted in our own communities and around us so that we can have resilience together, no
Mm-hmm.
matter what is happening out there.
Right, right. And that's another component of that toxic capitalism, because it emphasizes individuality. It encourages us to not work with each other. It encourages us to see every other business that is even slightly similar as competition,
Yeah.
instead of an opportunity to collaborate and get stronger. And that mycelium network is exactly what toxic capitalism does not encourage. It
Yeah.
wants us to be freaked out and afraid and alone and figuring it out on our own, and intimidated, and overwhelmed by others who've maybe achieved something or done something that we feel like we can't do, constantly comparing ourselves to the next individual, instead of saying, okay, like, I'm really good at this. I am not really good at that, but you are. Let's work together. Even like the examples that you were giving about the mushroom networks, and how they literally will like feed each other, and different types of mushrooms will talk to each other and be like, hey, do you know there's food over here? Like, let me help you get that, because if you do well, I'll do well, and there'll be more room for me. And all of these things that toxic capitalism tells us is not possible or is not real, nature really shows us actually is the opposite, that we do really, really well when we connect with each other, regardless of our like seeming differences, and that the resources that we have in this world are actually abundant, and that there's more than enough for all of us. We don't have to fight for it with each other. We can have more of it together. Yes, mushrooms definitely, someone saying in the chat, definitely communicate. They are talking to each other, and they're talking to each other in a way where we're not encouraged to do that. And social media, I think, kind of creates like a false sense of communication, because it feels like we're in communication with each other. But in reality, it just encourages us to compete with each other, because it gives us all of these like false views of people, and it makes us have this pressure to be like, I'm doing really, really great, and you should now come learn from me, when the truth might be like, actually, I'm struggling, and I could really use like support. And that is one of the big lessons that nature can teach us, and that shows us that like we can still be exchanging money for our services. That is not the problem. But where it is being hoarded and collected is the issue. And there are more of us than there are more mushrooms on this earth than there are people, right? There are mushrooms that are underneath, terrain that we can't even see, that are living all around us. There's more of us than there are of them, and we're not talking to each other and connecting with each other, working with each other, sharing resources, with a common goal of like collective success and collective thriving. And money's not the reason.
Well, and like this kind of protest really does work.
Yeah.
It really, really does work. And what if we all stopped buying from the dumbass Instagram ads and Amazon and stuff, and actually spent money on the things that mattered to us, or tarot readings, so that we can make better decisions for ourselves,
Right. Get out into your community and like look for the local coffee shop. It might be there. There may not be 14 of them like there are Starbuckses or Dunkin' Donuts, but they are there. And we have to make that conscious effort to work with each other rather than against each other. And that nervous system regulation is, I think, a key component to that happening, because when you are stressed out, when you are freaked out, you are going to make decisions that are easiest. You are going to hop on the Amazon because you literally don't have a moment to yourself. You don't have time to go
Yeah.
and find the local store that's making its own soap, or making its own candles. You are going to opt for the easier thing. And then the powers that be, for like lack of a better term, are able to use that to our advantage. They know that we don't have time to cook an entire meal for our kids. So they know that if they come up with the cheapest, most convenient option, that they can take advantage of that, and that you'll give them your money instead.
Well, yeah, like these
Of
are
going,
feedback loops, just like what you're saying of like you have less time, you're going to spend more money on the Amazon, you're going to like spend more time on the social media, it's going to make you more stressed out, it's going to continue this versus like, okay, do take the extra 10 minutes to walk to that further coffee shop and have the conversation with someone. Now there's someone you can be in relationship with. You look forward to those times. You have this deeper connection with, which fills you, which does all of the chemistry in our brains that make us happy, the way that social media tries to do, but just is like
failing.
Yeah.
But and also, and I want to point on that, because like when we talk about, when anybody talks about like, and we make statements like take the extra 10 minutes to find the local coffee shop, or spend the extra dollar to get from your local bookstore, the conversation immediately goes to privilege, right? Where people are like, oh, well, that's a really privileged argument to make. Not everybody has that 10 minutes. Not everybody has that extra dollar. And I get that. There's absolute validity in that counter argument. But what has been proving to be true in my own life is that I don't have to step into a place of privilege to have the extra 10 minutes to go walk to the local coffee shop. By regulating my nervous system, by making changes in my life so that I get another hour of sleep, I have the extra 10 minutes. By not insisting that I must answer these emails right now, that I must do this right now or I'm going to fail, I have the extra 10 minutes. By not pushing myself to a point where I am sick and I have to take 3 days off of work, or I have to spend money on medications that I otherwise wouldn't need to take, or vitamins that I otherwise wouldn't need to take, I actually have that extra dollar. I have that extra $5. So the energy, the resources, etc., to make these types of conscious and intentional choices actually are already available to us. It is
Well, like,
not something that you have
and
to be privileged to be able to do. If you realize that the resources are there and we need to utilize them, maybe more consciously.
well, like, and if we want to make big change in our society, we might have to do hard things.
That part,
And like
that part too.
something my husband, he's like walking in right now, something he always says is, because he spends so much time growing his food, like it's his devotion. And he charges a very fair price for that. And if he has
Right.
people coming up and being like, meh, 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 it's so expensive, his thing he always says to me is like, if you can't afford to pay for good food, learn how to grow good food. And like that
Yes.
is a fundamental shift. Is that
Yeah.
harder? Yes. Do we need to do hard things to change society? Yes.
Yes, absolutely. I love that you make that point too, because yes, on the one hand, it actually doesn't require necessarily privilege and access in order to make these more conscious choices. As I mentioned, I'm finding in my own life that more time, more money, etc., actually already exists for me.
Yeah.
But also, even if it didn't, I feel you're making the point of like, okay, but you might want to go ahead and try to do it anyway, because some of these things maybe are going to be a little bit difficult. And that's okay. Um, working a little bit harder or making more of a sacrifice for something might be necessary if you want to go like that route, right? Like if you want to
Yeah.
grow your, if you want to have good food, for example, to go with your example, and paying more for it for some reason feels inaccessible to
For
you.
right
You
now,
have
it doesn't.
for
Yeah.
right now feels inaccessible to you. You that doesn't mean that McDonald's is now your only other option. You also could then grow your own food and have access to that. There are other ways to do it. It more comes to like a commitment, I guess, or a
Yeah.
mental shift of deciding like I'm going to make these changes in my life.
Yeah. Well, like, and like, let's also acknowledge the privilege of just if most people listening are in the United States, we're like
Yeah.
a part of the 1%. Like, if
Mhm.
you're able to access YouTube, you are incredibly privileged. So there
Yeah.
is like, there's a lot of other routes to be able to live amazing lives that you can see by
Mhm.
looking outside of the United States.
Mhm.
But like to kind of like sidestep this over, like what you were saying around having immediate access to more time and money for people who are entrepreneurs in the room. This is definitely something I see when if you are switching from a corporate job or switching from like an hourly rate thing to being a business owner where
Mhm.
unless you are like only selling service one-to-one services, like time is a little bit different. Like there's a
Mhm.
different quality of time because
Yeah.
that's not actually how money comes in.
Right.
But we will bring over whatever we were somatically comfortable with or it was programmed into us for how much we need to be working instead of
Mhm.
like what are the leverage points here, what are the most important things that actually make a difference in my business, because I
Mhm.
will find often with clients that they're working 40 hours a week when they could honestly be working 5 to 10 because they're
Right.
filling their time with bullshit.
Yeah. Yes, facts. Yeah. No, I mean, there are all these studies that support that like the amount of work that you do for your employer could very much be done in shorter periods of time, but you're incentivized because of the hourly rate or whatever to take longer and spend more time to get things done,
Mhm.
which then like feeds into this loop of a sense of overwhelm and oh my god, I don't have enough time, um, because you're not going to be rewarded for getting your 8 hour day done in 3 hours.
Yeah.
And so there like that's an important factor I think for people to for all of us, to keep in mind. And I think about one of my so I've been doing this thing where I do a 30-day challenge for myself this year.
Oh, I love
And my no coffee was one for March. For February, it was read every night. So I'm trying to read a book a month.
it.
January was something else. Oh, working like walking 4 days a week, which by the way, you mentioning that we really only need 120 minutes in nature or 120 minutes outside in order to like check our nervous system was huge for me because I was like, that's 4 30-minute walks.
Yeah,
Like if I just go for a walk for 30 minutes, 4 days a week, I'm getting my 120 minutes. So now that's been in my head of like, did you get your 120 minutes? Like that's all it
I
takes.
love
Um,
that.
so that's been really helpful. But my 30 day and it starts
Today.
today. Pray for
What is
me.
it?
My 30 day for April is to get to bed at 1 a.m.
Okay. Mhm.
No more of this 3 a.m. stuff. Get to
Mhm.
bed at 1 a.m. No matter what, stop what I'm doing,
Mhm.
go to bed at 1. That will give me 7.5 hours of sleep, which may or may not be the right amount. I don't know. I'm not a scientist, but I know that it will be infinitely more than I typically get,
Uh-huh.
which can only help me. So that's like my big commitment for right now, and it's going to be hard.
Oh my god,
Um,
it's gonna be life-changing. I'm so
it's
excited
going to
for
be
you.
hard. It's going to be hard. And it's going to require some shifts and some difficulty and some sacrifices on my part. But it's also going to require that I do things like not waste about 3 to 4 hours a day, according to my phone's metrics on social media.
Yeah. Mhm.
Because if I'm really, really honest with myself, which I think sometimes is a little hard for us to do, as busy as I am as a single solopreneur with multiple businesses, essentially operating under one umbrella, being on my own for the first time in 15 years, because was with my husband since I was 19, all of my
Wow.
adult life, having a partner, having somebody else with an income, having somebody else in my home. And now it all falls on me. I have to take care of myself. I have to figure out how to pay my rent and care for my family and enjoy my life and all of that from the singular income that I have created, the decision that I have made to go full blown into entrepreneurship and not work a 9 to 5 and all of that. Like, I have to live with those choices and build something for myself. And it's been really easy for me to tell myself that the reason why I can't get to bed before 3 a.m. is because I just have so much work.
Mm-hmm.
And the truth is, yes, I do have so much work, but I also spend multiple hours a day doom scrolling.
Yeah.
And that's the truth.
Mm-hmm.
That's my truth. And I have had to like look myself in the mirror and admit that and be like, there have been times where 11 o'clock has hit and you look up at the clock and it's 1 a.m. and all you have done is been scrolling through Instagram.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, speaking of the nervous system, it is like, it's one of those switches where like we want to be excited and activated, but we like are afraid to sit down and focus on a project. So switching over to social media, it like fills that, but it doesn't actually put any output. So no,
Right,
it's
right.
such a real thing. I have such a hard time with it. Freedom app is one that I've played with. I don't know if you've seen that. And then there's another one. It will straight up lock. You will not be able to open it. So it's like, okay, gotta post my post for the day
I
because it will
literally
freaking lock you
said
out.
this morning. This
Yeah.
morning, I said this to myself because, again, of course, last night I was like, we're going to get a jump start on this 1 a.m. thing. And then 3 o'clock, here I am, like, just getting into bed. And I was like, fuck, I did it again. And
So
I
you need
woke up
one that cuts you off at like 11 p.m.
Yes. And I woke up and I was like, because I have all the bells and whistles set up, right? Like, I've got the screen time, I've got the
Oh
downtime, I've
yeah,
got
you
the
just
thing,
say
and then it pops up and I just go ignore. And I'm like, ooh, yeah, okay, well, but five more minutes,
there's
ignore.
another one that's worked really well for me. I think it's called Clear Space or something. I'll have to look it
Mhm.
up. But you can set challenges where it makes you squat for every minute that you want to be on. Very effective. Or you could do push-ups, or it works better than freedom for me.
That is what I need because I want to be snatched for this summer. My
Baby,
divorce is
this is
about
a
to be
win-win.
finalized. I want to have a hot witch summer this year. And I'm definitely in my like married body. And I'm like, I know that there is a bad witch inside of me. She just needs like 10 more push-ups to like be
She
released.
needs to squat for every minute on Instagram.
Yeah. Wait, it's called what's it called? Clear app?
Let me see if I can
Please,
find
please,
it.
please. I need
It's
the deets.
called
I need this today. I literally woke up today and I was like so mad at myself for once again staying up really late and now I'm tired and blah blah blah. And I was like, I said it out loud. I was like, I need my phone to actually self-destruct when my I need it
freedom
to
does
blow up
that.
in my hand.
Yeah. Okay.
Because
So this
like,
is the where's the chat? This is
yeah.
the Clear Space one, and then there's the Freedom app. That one is one that I found one like that in college because me and my friends during like that's when like Facebook was the thing, and you just like,
Mhm.
okay, Board Panda, Facebook, like all those things. You need to not, your computer will not let you open them. Like
Yeah,
it
that's what
just
I need. It can't be
Mhm.
just like press a button type nonsense. I need it to
Mhm.
actually be like, "Mwah, nope, you can't do it." So that when I'm on, because obviously I have to be on, but do
Mhm.
things, do your post, do your thing, and then get the hell out. Okay, so this is completely unsponsored, but get ClearSpace and Freedom app if you would
I
like.
mean, you try it out and you can give your review, but I found both of
Yes.
those very, very helpful.
Yeah, no, well, listen, both of those platforms, if you're listening, if you would like an ad spot, you just let me know because if this works, I will be singing your names from the mountaintops. But get clear space and freedom up. I will definitely be looking into that. Thank you so much.
You're
Because
welcome.
that's what
No,
I need. I love
it's a
that.
big deal. It's especially if you're neurodivergent in any way. I think just for everyone, it's so
Mhm.
easy. They're built to be addictive, and they do really bad shit to our brains.
Yep.
So
Yeah, and that's what I needed. April 1st. Okay, I have a new level of confidence and faith in myself that I'm actually going to be able to pull this off,
I
because I'm
love
going to be able to program something to like blow up my Instagram when I'm
that.
not supposed to be on it, which is, I need that level of aggression at this point.
Mhm.
I love that so much, and this conversation has been so incredible. Would love to have you on the show again, because I feel like there's so many things that we still didn't even get into, but I am prayerful that everyone who has tuned in today has walked away with something significant and impactful, especially for my witchpreneurs, my spiritual entrepreneurs who are so near and dear to my heart, because I'm right here with you all. This book, get your hands on it. And Witchwork has a link to our bookshop.org storefront. So if you are looking for a way to get your hands on the book without supporting the Amazons and those folks, then you can absolutely get it from our bookshop storefront. It's listed under Allie's favorites and also under the business witch section. And bookshop.org is a really phenomenal platform that allows you to support indie bookstores with your purchases. And their support has been really integral in our success. So take a look at bronxwitch.com, click on shop, go to our storefront, and order yourself a copy of Regenerative Business. You will not be sorry for doing so. So what can folks look forward to next? Any projects underway? Is there anything happening on Dirty Alchemy that we should be getting excited for?
I mean, I'm in the process of writing the next book, which is called Radical
Yes.
Riches for Radical Witches, doing
Yes.
radical shit in the world.
Yeah.
So that is been a journey for me. My
Mhm.
very ambitious, almost impossible goal is for it to be published in August. So
Wow. Do it. On my birthday month. I feel good about that.
yes, it's gonna be a Leo book.
Yes, I feel good about that. Really good. And yes, thank you. Thank you for more. Because what you have given us with Regenerative Business is so huge and wonderful, and has made such a big difference in my life and on this growing business. And so, yeah, I'm ready to, now that I've learned how I've been harming myself,
Yeah.
basically, and how to heal from that, the next step after that is to step into the wealth and the abundance that comes next. So yeah, can I pre-order now? I'll be the first person to get my hands on a copy. Thank you so much
Oh, so
for
glad. Yeah,
that.
and I'm the one on Instagram, so if you ever feel free to DM me at the Dirty Alchemy, and I'm the one in there, so you can ask
Mhm.
any questions. My intention is to get started again on YouTube. We'll see how that goes, but looking forward to some YouTube videos since we're doing a YouTube live right now.
Right, perfect. This is like a reintroduction. YouTube is calling your name.
It
Come on
is.
back.
It's
Come
like
on back to us. Well, this has been so
so
fantastic. Thank you
fun.
so much for spending this time with me, with the lovely Better Witch podcast audience, for sharing all of your knowledge through your book, and being a voice for what really is a radical idea. It maybe shouldn't be, but in the world that we're in, is a radical idea that damage has been done to the earth and to us individually, and sustaining is not enough. We've got to put into place practices that are actually going to regenerate and put back what has been taken. And I'm just praying that absolutely everyone heeds your advice, and that we hear more from you. So thank you so much for being with us.
Oh, thanks for having me. Bye, everyone.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you, witches, for tuning in to another episode of the Better Witch podcast. I have been your host, Allie Kravitz. For spiritual business tips, follow me on Instagram and Threads at Bronx Witch, and you can find links to my classes, coaching programs, and more in the description of this episode. Remember, witches, when we know better, we witch better. See you in the next one. Blessed be.